Watch this.
There's new majority leadership at the State House to start the 6th week of the session. Republican Representative Blanksma, the woman voted out last week, gives us a peek at what happened behind closed doors and why.
Have you seen what is in the library?
Yeah, a lot of books. And a few of them, some Idahoans have deemed harmful to minors. So on the second try this session, there's a proposal to rectify that. Finally, something both sides can agree on. They don't like it. On this day, in 1809, our 16th president was born. So 215 years later, we're taking a moment to say happy birthday to Honest Abe, to show his face and showcase his important tie to Idaho. The decision came in mid-afternoon Thursday. House Majority Leader, who has been in that position since last session, Republican Representative Blanksma, was voted out of that leadership position in a closed-door meeting. It's the first time this has happened mid-session ever. We learned today Representative Jason Monks was voted in as her replacement. Okay, so the question is, which we had last week and we hope to get answered today, what led to Blanksma losing the trust of her caucus or the leadership position? Well, Joe Paris, you asked her that, so what did she tell you? I have to think this has to do with what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks and what's been happening in JFAC.
Yeah, this has a big, I guess a big portion of dealing with this is the JFAC budget situation, but let me explain. So it's a major factor for sure, and we've talked about it for the last few weeks. Again, there are members of the Idaho legislature that do not like or do not trust the new process of budgeting at the State House, and the new process involves the budgeting committee, JFAC, passing what's called maintenance budgets that are essentially meant to be base needs for an agency, and then the process would continue later on in the session with lawmakers circling back to take up supplemental requests, line items, and replacements to really supplement that budget. Critics of the new process say that the maintenance budgets, though, they're not that at all, and they're instead stripped down with not even enough money to keep the lights on. Supporters of the new process say they're very wrong. But Representative Blanksma says that her objection to the process had a clear end result.
Monday and Tuesday, we started to see that some people were frustrated for one reason or another.
Mm-hmm. And then for you, I guess, when you saw them call for a vote to retain Speaker Moyle, was that a surprise to you?
No, we had been warned the day before that that was going to happen, and that's what that was going to look like.
And when that was announced to you, what were your thoughts?
I'm frustrated, to be honest. I am frustrated in that I feel like I've done a good job, and I have not operated any differently from people who've held this position in the past. But it is what it is, and I serve at the will of the caucus.
When the leadership came to you, or did the leadership come to you and say, we're going to have a vote on your current role?
I don't know if I would say leadership came to me, but yeah, it was made clear that we were going to vote.
Mm-hmm. And when you were in that vote, I guess people don't know, I guess, what happens at these private caucus meetings. As much as you are comfortable telling us, is there debate in these? Is there argument, or is it sit down and let's vote and decide our leadership team?
We had some different paths forward. Ultimately, the vote of confidence in the leadership team was taken, and I lost the confidence of my colleagues, and that's frustrating to do, but it's all done by secret ballot and counted by a couple of individuals, and it doesn't look like the process that you would think of for voting. It is very private.
So there was never like a tally on the chalkboard say, here's our final count?
No, there's not. It was the opposite of what you saw for the speaker's race, right? When
you got the results, I guess, what came to mind in terms of what happened here? Or was it pretty obvious to you what had happened?
I feel like I understand what happened. I'm really trying to be careful because I don't want to impugn any of my colleagues or their motives. But it is what it is, and so you just kind of embrace the change and go with it.
Do you think it's as simple as just disagreements on how to do something?
I think that's some of it. I think I'm known, well, you know me, as being fairly vocal when I think that something is wrong or that something needs to be righted, and sometimes that turns out and sometimes it doesn't.
Is it, I guess, awkward being here, or is it kind of just, okay, well, this is where it happens?
Well, I've had some people say that they're surprised I came in or surprised I ran a bill. This is the job. I'm here to do a job for people in District 8, and I will continue to support my constituents. And the day that I can't do that is the day that I should hang it up. And so that's what I continue to do. And even though it was the budgets this time, I did not feel that what was being done in those omnibus budgets was good for my district or for the state of Idaho, and I stand by that.
Do you think this was good, bad, or neutral for Idaho politics, the way everything played out?
I don't know that it said good things about Idaho politics. I think that what was done was done. I think that maybe we should have tried a little bit harder to rectify the situation in the less public arena to see if we could move something there, but it's difficult. And I don't think that Idahoans are used to this kind of infighting on this kind of level.
Which is an interesting comment from Representative Blanksma, because feedback that I've had from people at the State House, including lawmakers and people that work in that building, is that they felt that the last 2 weeks felt more like Washington, D.C., and they didn't recognize this brand of Idaho politics. Again, though, we're going to follow this very closely. It is a situation that is evolving. I spoke with a member of House Majority Leadership today, Brian, and I asked, do you think that this kind of is the end-all, be-all? Do you think this whole situation is solved? They told me that, for now it appears it is, but they wouldn't be surprised if something maybe bubbles up later in the session. Tensions get very heated when you're talking about the laws and the budgets for the entire state.
I keep going back to what Chair of the state party, Dorothy Moon, has said before, that the party has never been more united. Now, this obviously shows otherwise. Other instances show otherwise. But it seems like if you don't toe the party line, like there's no room for disagreement at all, either in the State House or just in the party in general right now. Have we heard anything from Speaker of the House, Mike Moyle?
And I know a lot of people are wanting to hear from the Speaker of the House on this. We have reached out via text message and phone call to Speaker Moyle. We have not heard back yet, but I would be interested to have him react to some of the things we heard Representative Blanksma talk about. And when I talked to Idahoans, especially last week with what's going on with the budget, they reached out to us saying, we want lawmakers to get back to business. We're tired of seeing what they called high school drama. I'd be interested to hear what the leadership of the State House thinks of that feedback from Idahoans.
So would a lot of other people. We'll see if that comes through. All right, thanks, Joe.
Rather, what we have seen, again, is just illustrated, are the attempts of a few people to label certain books as pornographic, not according to the Miller test or to state statute, but because they include homosexual characters or people of color.
The bill makes no provisions or requirements for libraries or schools to preemptively keep harmful materials away from kids. They only have to react when someone complains.
Well, Senate Bill 1289 seems to be the library bill compromise nobody wanted, at least according to nearly 3 hours of public testimony today in the Senate State Affairs Committee. But a bill which passed by a vote of 6-3. You just heard from two people who testified today. One, president of the Idaho Freedom Foundation, who believes the freedoms allowed in the library are too much and doesn't know if he would trust sending his kids to the library to just roam free and see whatever is there. He also doesn't believe this bill is tough enough and, in fact, would codify allowing harmful materials in libraries. The other, as you also heard from, a Ketchum, Idaho librarian who has worked there 10 years and says they have circulated well over 1 million books during her time. With how many requests for reconsideration? That'd be none. 0. She worries this bill would, if made law, would also be difficult to handle for small rural libraries, like in Bellevue, just down the road from her, where they have just one part-time employee, and they would have to create a review committee dedicated to handle claims, which could be at the expense of other things like summer reading or helping seniors access telehealth. So here's what 1289 would do if made into law. It would require libraries to set up a material review committee to review requests for relocation, which most larger libraries and library districts already have. If a parent has a problem with a book, they just fill out a relocation form. The library would then hold a public hearing on that book, a hearing that would be published in the local newspaper. A decision would then be made at that public hearing by the review committee. And if a parent doesn't like that decision, well, they can file for a judicial review. If that doesn't satisfy them, then they can bring a civil action against the school or that library for $250 in damages or any other damages they deem necessary. So instead of a direct do not stop at go or do not pass go directly to a civil or criminal action that the previous library bills had, there's a 3-step process before it gets to that. So what does Idaho's Library Association Vice President have to say about Senate Bill 1289, the Great Compromise?
While the Library Association and many other people in the community do not feel any legislation is necessary, they clearly see that something should be passed this year. And so we understand the political reality of that. And the Library Association feels that because all it does essentially is codify what we're already doing, which is what we've been trying to explain, it is something that may be manageable.
Something that may be manageable, she said. Well, Senate Bill 1289 now heads to the Senate floor. One person is dead, 3 others are injured after an argument turned deadly in Idaho Falls this morning. Now 2 teenagers are in custody. Morgan Romero has that and some lighter news from around the 208 in today's 411.
2 people are in custody after a deadly shooting in Idaho Falls early this morning. The Idaho Falls Police Department says a large group of people started arguing in a parking lot near Compass Academy when 2 of them fired guns. But when police got there, everyone was gone except for 3 victims. 2 were shot and 1 was run over by a car. All 3 were taken to a hospital. Police say a 4th victim had already gone to a medical center. One of the victims died this morning. Police say they identified everyone in the argument and arrested 19-year-old Gabriel Perkins and 18-year-old Taylor Allenbaugh. Police say though the shooting didn't happen on school property, the school district decided to close Compass Academy and Dora Erickson Elementary School today so police can investigate. The Ada County Sheriff's Office is looking for as many as 3 men they say were involved in a fight in Kuna Friday night. That fight left a 25-year-old man in the hospital with a, quote, significant head injury. The Sheriff's Office says it happened at a bonfire in the desert near Kuna Butte, which is a popular off-road area near the Kuna Caves Swan Falls roads. According to witnesses, the 25-year-old man got into a fight with a woman at the bonfire. After that, the men attacked him. If you have any information, call Ada County Dispatch at the number on your screen, 208-377-6790. Registration is now open for the Idaho State Museum's Spring Break History Camps. The day camps are at the museum, run by the staff, from March 18th through the 22nd. Each day of camp is $70 per student, or $60 if you're a museum member. Sign up for all 5 days and get $25 off. You can register at history.idaho.gov. Losing fantasy football is never fun, but it stings a bit more when your friends come up with your punishment. Like this couple who was spotted in Kuna holding up signs that read, "My wife sucks at fantasy football," and a sign that said, "I lost in fantasy football," and dressed like Hooters employees. The best part? This is the 2nd year in a row they've lost. Last year it was her husband who sucked, and she had to tag along. Speaking of dedication to your partner, how about a romantic night at the old Idaho Penitentiary for Valentine's Day? Wednesday from noon till midnight, bring your ball and chain to Romancing the Pen, Love and Lockup. Learn about incarcerated couples and read old love letters as you explore the grounds. Admission is $2 for $14 or $10 a pop if you're riding solo. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Morgan Romero.
Happy birthday! I know, we're still a week away from President's Day, but that doesn't mean we can't celebrate the Prez who meant the most to Idaho on his actual birthday. You know, the Gem State likely wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Lincon, and we wouldn't be here if it weren't for you, our viewers. Time to text us and be part of the 208. 208-321-5614. Always include your name and the hashtag the 208. Keep your messages clean, concise, and clever, and we'll probably be celebrating yours at the end of the show. Here it is, February 12th, and history buffs recognize this date as the birthday of our 16th president. The name Abraham Lincoln likely conjures up images of log cabins, top hats, and of course, honesty. But it should also bring up images of Idaho. More than any other state, Idaho is related to Abraham Lincoln. And if he wasn't dealing with enough at the time, Lincoln created the territory of Idaho back in 1863, smack dab in the middle of the Civil War. Well, then 2 years later, in April of 1865, history suggests Lincoln was considering Idaho issues in the White House. He even invited the former governor of the Idaho Territory, that'd be William Wallace, to see a play at Ford's Theater with him on April 15th. Wallace declined. Lincoln's death, though, meant he would never step foot in Idaho, but his legacy is littered around the state and in Boise. There's the sitting statue outside the Black History Museum in Julie Davis Park, a replica of one created in 1911 by Gutzen Borglum, the same Idaho-born sculptor who carved Mount Rushmore. That depiction, deep in thought, was dedicated in June of 2010. But there's another one, an older one, which has been standing sentry outside the State House since his birthday the year before. However, it's a facsimile of the former president, which actually goes back even further. On February 12, 1915, a Monday, on the same day the Liberty Bell stopped in Boise on its railroad tour of southern Idaho, there was a ceremony to unveil another metal marker of emancipation. An event that far outshone the reception of the Liberty Bell, according to the Idaho Statesman. The ladies of the Grand Army of the Republic dedicated a bronze statue of Lincoln to be placed on the grounds of the old soldiers' home in the City of Trees. The life-sized 6'4" statue stood atop a block of sandstone from the foothills, and it topped out at 12 feet. It was also the only such statue west of Lincoln, Nebraska, a claim which still stands today.
The oldest public monument in the western United States devoted to the memory of Lincoln.
Even though the statue has stood in a couple of places, until finally coming to rest in front of the Capitol in 2009.
Because people will have to ask, why is Lincoln standing in front of the Idaho Capitol? And the answer is, he created the place.
Well, back in 1915, the legislature kicked in $500 to help fund that statue, which would be the equivalent of about $15,000 today. Other things Lincoln did that impacted Idaho: 1862, he signed the Morrill Act, which funded public colleges focusing on agriculture and mechanical arts, and that would lead to the creation of the University of Idaho, the land-grant university up north in Moscow. That happened in 1889. But also in 1862, Lincoln signed the Homestead Act, which would bring more than 60,000 families to the Idaho Territory, many of them displaced Southern Democrats who fought for the Confederacy, which is why we have places like Atlanta, Dixie, Grayback Gulch, the Robert E. Lee Campground, and why we have now the structurally unsound Union Block building in downtown Boise.
some beautiful areas around Idaho. Speaking of this last winter being beautiful, we've, not too bad. If you look at these numbers, I'll describe what they are. Basically means that our winter has been fairly warm, well above average for each month. In fact, the month of December, we were 4.2 degrees above the average. That's the 30-year average for the month of December. So it was, you remember that month seemed like, okay, well, it's been all right. It's been chilly, but here and there. But, this winter hasn't been too bad. Then all of a sudden, the arrival of January, we were 1 degree above average in January. What was the difference there? The first 2 weeks of January, do you recall, it started on the 3rd, and we had all of the snow that came throughout the area. We had some cold temperatures. And then about the 15th, it started to warm up. As you get into the first part of February so far, we have been 5.4 degrees above the average. Now just imagine that, the only real winter, even though it has been cold at times, and I know that we've had our complaints, but here, the first 2 weeks of January is the only real big type situation with the snow and the cold conditions that we've had so far for this year. So we'll see what holds on. Last summer we were talking about being an El Nino winter, above average temperatures, and it looks like it is working out that way. Right now, today we had just a beautiful day. We had some high clouds, some sunshine that pushed in. Next chance of some showers. We got to go up here into Washington, up here into Yakima, as well as the Tri-Cities. They're getting some light showers there. And you notice how this cold air is trying to push down into the state at this particular time. Now, let me show you what's going to save our bacon on that one. As you look out here, there's a storm system that's coming up from the southwest. It's quite a bit stronger, so it's going to likely keep that air. It's going to come into northern Idaho, but not get as far south as southern Idaho. And it'll start out with a rain snow, but that's mainly rain. This is mainly rain. In fact, just to point out, we're starting to kind of develop there an atmospheric river once again. And into Wednesday and Thursday, especially later Wednesday, as well as Thursday, we could be talking about some pretty good rain that could be coming into our area. If you look at the temperatures, though, they still stay on the warm side. If you look here Tuesday, Wednesday through Thursday, and then finally as we get into the weekend, still some showers are possible, which I'll show you in the 7-day forecast, which is right now. As you notice, temperature comes down for tomorrow and Wednesday because of some of the rain showers. You might see a little snow mixed in at the beginning, but here through here could be anywhere from a half an inch, well, a quarter of an inch to a half an inch of rain. Quite a bit could be coming in with that. We break up just a little bit, but we're back on Saturday and Sunday with a chance of a few rain showers that'll be around the area, and the same thing in Monday. But if you look at these temperatures, we're still looking at highs getting back up to about 50 degrees as we get to Thursday. Friday, there's a chance of some even lower 50s. So even with the rain showers off and on, the temperatures are not too bad.
All right, final minute of the show on this Monday. Let's get to your comments. This one from Terry says, JFAC says trust the new process. Trust not earned. Last year, we ended up with the law for a caucus versus a primary, so few of us can participate. That's coming up on March 2nd, by the way, for the Republicans. I've used our public libraries for 2 years and have my 2 sons growing up. Never had any problems with book content as a parent. Parents just need to do parenting. No legislation needed, TLS. We got a couple of those comments today about the parents being allowed to be parents. The book thing just goes on and on. It's a witch hunt, says Larry on the bench. That is another comment that we get thrown out there. Kind of nice using some modern vernacular, I guess. Rick says, do proponents of Senate Bill 1289, library bill, have a specific book they would say is an example of why this concern with our Idaho libraries? A lot of people on the top of the list would be a book, I don't know, for example, Gender Queer, which talks about LGBTQ themes. It's a graphic novel meant for young adults, usually in the young adult section. If your library doesn't have a young adult section, it's not likely going to be there. Seriously, legislators, please focus on important issues like housing instead of trying to control our lives and choices like library books, says Jennifer. I don't know why legislators don't know this, but people don't get their porn at the library, says Rod in Boise. It's a good point. Usually get that somewhere else. With the libraries, how about this one? Let parents stay out of everyone else's business already. That's B&B in Nampa. We'll be back here tomorrow. See you then.